PK, we're jumping right into it because we had to kind of hold ourselves back from talking about it before we even got started. So today we're talking about The Island.
Yeah. Not as in like an island, but the movie The Island, for anyone who was unaware.
Yeah, this is so I had never heard of this one. Last week PK had never heard of Minority Report before, but this one is new to me. So I had to look it up.
It was new to me as well. I heard about it, and I heard good things about it.
Who told you the good things? I'm just curious.
Well, it was my brother-in-law.
Okay, that's fine.
But
we don't have to. We don't love people based on their taste in films. Thankfully,
exactly.
We love them for other reasons.
Yeah, we do. But I also just heard in general, like, oh, it's interesting, it's pretty cool, and so
I will give it that the first part of the movie, or the first act, is like not that bad. Like, it's kind of interesting, and then it immediately, like, I'm not saying it's great, but I'm just saying, like, it could have been. It leads, like, the rest of the movie is definitely worse, in my opinion. The action, the Michael Bay-esque action.
Yeah. When did it take a turn for the worst?
I think it was like when they're escaping is kind of like the moment where it all sort of starts to fall apart a little bit. And even then it maybe could have been salvageable, but like
when they follow the moth, because moths know the way to the outside.
Yeah. It's an interesting, I guess I'll try and like cover it in the order, so that way like maybe the audience can have, if you've never seen this movie, you can have maybe a similar experience.
Yeah. The concept is really cool. The concept of the movie is really cool and very interesting.
That's why, like, it could have been done so much better. I'm curious. I guess I didn't look up, like, so how did this movie get made? Like, did Michael Bay, like, was this adapted from? Part of the reason I didn't look it up is because I have sort of a theory that I almost don't want to ruin by actually like finding something useful.
Oh, I'm curious now.
So The Island, well, it's written by Caspian Treadwell Owen, who I've never heard of before, Alex Kurtzman, who I have heard of before, and Robert Orci. Okay, so Alex Kurtzman is he's not, like, known for being a great screenwriter, exactly. I mean, he writes for... That was my biggest complaint, I think, with this movie, was the screenwriting and the dialogue. Yeah, and then
it just did not work.
Yeah, and then also I don't like Michael Bay's style of action. Like, he can do some visually impressive things, but even that is kind of lacking in this movie, I feel like.
The ending had some cool shots in it.
Yeah.
The two biggest pluses for me for the movie was the what was I just saying? Oh, the concept is pretty interesting, and then, which isn't really a compliment, but I'm including it as a compliment. And then there's like a line of dialogue at the very end, which I won't spoil, but I actually thought was pretty good.
Okay, maybe off the show you can tell me what that was.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I mean, I guess I'll agree. I'll say that the concept was, like, in the hands of a better director and a better writing team, this could have been a pretty solid movie. I think you'd have to structurally change a lot. I think you could leave a decent amount of the beginning intact, but, like, I think the way in which they resolve the problem is kind of stupid. I'm reminded of a quote that it kind of applies to a lot of Michael Bay movies. It's from the Foundation trilogy. Let me pull it up so that way I get it exactly right.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. Except I feel like in Michael Bay talk, it's like his first go-to. Because that's, I feel like, the problem is, like, it's an interesting thing, and then it's like, how do we solve the problem? It's like through really bad action sequences that don't really fit with our characters or the story. Like, that's how we solve the problem, is through violence. And it's like, you can still have some action, don't get me wrong, like, but, like, it would have been maybe a lot better served by being a lot more of a thoughtful movie, maybe leave the mystery of what's going on hang for a little longer, because I feel like they sort of let you slowly put it together for the first 20 to 30 minutes, and then immediately like they just pull the whole cloth off of everything and just lay it all bare for you, and you're like, oh, we still have like 2 hours of this movie though. Like, it's no longer
I guess that's true.
It's no longer
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's no longer like discovering, you know, the fact that this world is a lie. It's now just a Michael Bay like action movie with car chases and gunfights and things like that. So helicopters. Yeah. When it
quickly, maybe I shouldn't say descended, but when it quickly evolved into the typical like action movie, I was kind of lost interest, because like it was like, okay, now they're just going to be chasing people for like with actions like driving and flying and throwing punches and there's guns. Like, that's just like, as soon as I realized that this movie was headed in a direction that would showcase that primarily for a long time, I was like, okay, I just kind of lost interest a little bit, because the most interesting thing is the Institute. Should we
Yes.
explain?
So I think
let me, the concept that we're praising.
Yes, let me kind of go through some things I noticed, because when we first start introduced to this movie, we get like sort of this typical of the time, maybe like it was sort of this corny like intro scene of like, okay, you know, Ewan McGregor is on a yacht. It's like a dream sequence, you can tell just from the way it's shot. Ewan McGregor's on a yacht with Scarlett Johansson, and that was like one of the, actually, like when I was first going into this movie, is like Michael Bay's the director or whatever, and I'm like, eh. And then, but then we got like our two leads, Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson, and I'm like, well, both of those are like pretty good, you know, actors. So like, you know, I'll give it a chance. So that's why I went into this movie, I feel like actually pretty neutral at the beginning. I wasn't like trying to already find things to hate about it just because it's Michael Bay.
Yes, I was the same way. It was like, I saw it was Michael Bay, and I was like, oh no, because I'm not a fan. But like, well, you know what? I'll give it a shot. You know, I'll try to be kind and merciful. I'll give him a go, because it's been a long time since I ever saw a Michael Bay movie. So I'm like, maybe I am just unnecessarily biased against him. So I gave it a shot, and well, nothing's changed.
So
you were saying
Ewan McGregor is on a boat, and so is Scarlett Johansson, and they're like, it's some dreamy, like, oh, they're heading, you know, to some great place presumably, and then all of a sudden, like, Ewan McGregor gets knocked off a boat, and like people are like dragging him down, and he's like drowning, and you know, then he wakes up in his bed, and it's like this very regimented seeming area, like it's almost, you're like, is he in some sort of weird future prison? Like, what's the situation here? And he like goes over to, like, he's like getting his scanned on his wrist for him like waking up, and like he's going to the bathroom, and they're like analyzing his, you know,
his urine,
as he's peeing, to be like, oh, you have high sodium today, like, and I have to watch that. So then he like goes to his wardrobe, and it like slides out. And here's the thing, what's funny is he's missing a shoe, and he's like, oh, this is a big deal. I don't know if they ever actually explain, like, I don't think the missing shoe is actually ever important, which is kind of funny. Like, no. I don't know why they made a deal of that.
Just thrown in there,
thrown in there as a random thing that doesn't connect to anything. Whatever, it's fine. But, like,
there's a lot of that in this movie.
Yeah, what was funny to me, though, was what immediately caught my eye, and I was like, I'm not sure if this is just bad filmmaking or just, like, in the service of profit or what it is, but, like, all his shoes are, you know, Pumas. Like, they're all branded, and I was like, that's interesting. Like, because, like, if this is, like, some weird dystopian future where, like, everything's controlled by, like, this central authority, like, why would you still have these, like, branded items of, like, you know...
Puma is the only shoe company that has survived.
Yeah, it's like Demolition Man, where, like, Taco Bell they win the fast food wars, and then every restaurant becomes Taco Bell.
Or like in Minority Report, where apparently the only car company you see is Lexus.
Yes.
So Lexus wins the cars and Puma wins the shoes in the future. I think both of these actually, are mentioned to be in or right after the 2050s.
No, this movie takes place in 2019.
Is that what it said?
Yes, that is that. Oh, there is a visible date at one point that says what.
That is extremely. That is extremely awkward.
It's very ambitious. This movie's made in 2005, so it takes place literally 2019, so it's 14 years in the future.
Oh.
And like this is a very ambitious future for 14 years. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff happening and not a lot of time.
Including apparently one of the highly prized sports cars are Cadillacs now.
Yes. that was funny. But the yeah,
Lexus hadn't won the car war yet. So it's not 2015.
Yeah, the branding really bothered me. Like I can't remember what their actual like suits are. Their suits all have like that brand. I can't remember the name of the brand right now, but they all have a logo on them that's like not the corporation that they're in. It's like the brand of clothing they're wearing. They've got Aquafina water everywhere.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, they had there was another one too. I think I wrote it down. Let's see. Aquafina. Oh yeah, Speedo. They have Speedos on a lot of their stuff. A lot of their clothing is Speedos. It's just because you could say that's either smart or stupid, or like it's hard to tell with this movie, because on one hand, if the like world that they're being told exists is the way it is, then it is weird to have all these things. But maybe it's like, oh, maybe those are all, if this was like a better movie, you could almost claim those are all hints. Like why would there all be all this branded stuff in this?
Who's making all this manufactured clothing, nice clothing and outfits, if the whole world is, because what they're being told is the whole world has been contaminaminated
by a virus or something, some sort of
virus.
pathogen, and like it's killed a lot of people presumably. And then
they weren't wrong about 2020 or 2019.
I guess so. They're technically correct. Good job, Michael Bay. But yeah, they so there's this virus out there, and so it's like this is like the main survivor complex, I guess, except for the island, which is another place off somewhere else where like they're supposed to be like repopulating or whatever, but there's not enough room or something, and so they have to like,
which is a weird concept anyway.
It's a weird concept because like why wouldn't you just build this complex on the islands? Like it's, I don't understand, but like it's a lie, so it's fine, and all the people are basically children in the complex.
Yes.
So I mean,
they have a mentality of children.
Yes. Which is like hinted at, there's like first of all, we see one of the quote unquote survivors come in. Like they're like, oh, we found another survivor, and you see he's like an idiot or a small child in his behavior. And so he's like, okay, maybe that's the effect of the pathogen, is it makes you kind of like, I don't know, like destroys your IQ or something. I don't know. Because somebody makes a comment like, man, did we all look that stupid when we were first brought in? And then like oh man, like just the silliness of some of this stuff is a little bit out there. But like Sean Bean has golf clubs in his office. Like that's another thing. Like why would he have golf clubs? Is there a golf course somewhere in like?
I guess just office like just office stuff
like
to have.
When the world was collapsing, he's like, I gotta grab my golf bag too, like to bring to the medical facility where I'm gonna like.
And he's got a nice Picasso painting, which is never explained. Which is mentioned but never explained why it's there. A good movie, you can tell if what you're watching is a really good movie, because if everything or many things are very intentional, like even it's within a camera shot, the things you see in the background are intentional. Like that's a good movie. Well,
I actually this movie did trick me a little bit at first, because I didn't think that there was some global virus, but I did think very early on like this is some they're being held here and it's not what it seems like. There's probably still an outside world. There's a hint of that with the lunch lady, because like Scarlett Johansson's talking to her and is like, oh, we missed you the other day, like where were you? And it's like, where would she go if this is the only like place left on Earth? Like why would she be gone? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like does she take a break and go like, I don't know, to the island for a day and then come back? Like it's just very strange.
Apparently there's different sectors, right?
Yes,
like,
that's how they explain.
So they're told.
That's how they explain where the staff live to the to the people who are there.
So the staff are in black and everyone else are in white.
Yeah, which is obviously a very clear separation there. Yeah, but like that's a hint that like obviously this facility isn't the only, like it's not totally self-contained. If like the lunch lady, you can tell by the way the supervisor is working that like, okay, like they're the one supervisor that seems to be kind of friends with Lincoln, is the name of Ewan McGregor's character. He definitely seems like he's not
the only one with kind of a heart.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like if all these people working with clones, well,
that's another problem I have with this movie is I don't think it's possible.
Unnecessary viciousness and like heartlessness.
I don't think
bad guys.
Like they have the thing about secrets. So do you want to explain what the whole concept of why these people are in here before we go any further?
Yeah. So I just mentioned the clones thing. So they're told that they're surviving on the Earth, but the reality is that they're just clones of other people in the real world, which is totally fine, and that very rich people will pay millions of dollars, which I would honestly think could probably be more than millions, but millions of dollars to create a clone copy of themselves. So that way when the person is dying and they need like a new liver or a new heart, they just harvest that from their clone, and then the clone dies, and that's that. And so basically the Institute is this company. I forget.
I don't remember what the company's called either.
It's like it sounds like America. I think it's like America or something. That's weird.
Maybe
Merrick. That's what it was.
I don't know if that's supposed to be like some really clumsy social commentary on classism or something. Or
yeah,
what that
I
is.
don't know. But this private company, it's kind of interesting because like in Minority Report, there was also a company that was heading this new weird hybrid biological technical development. But anyways, in this movie, it's this company that is basically profiting off of it. Makes clones of for its clients, and then just harvests them. Of course, the clones they're made they don't start from like a kid and grow old. They're cloned exactly to be the age of the person currently, which is honestly kind of that might be I just thought of this right now. That might be a flaw because if you want like a perfect organ, you think you'd clone yourself in your perfect youth.
Like at 25 or 30 or something.
Apparently, if you're like 45 and you get a clone, your clone's also 45, but they're like in perfect health. Your clone is the thing. Like they're highly. That's why there's all this maintenance about their diet, what they can eat, what they can't eat, because they're paying very close attention to keep these people in perfect health. So that way, when their organs have to be harvested for their real person in the real world, it's all going to be good. And that's it. So that's the interesting concept. That is like, okay, like there's lots of ways you can go with this.
And the suspension of disbelief thing, like, here's the thing. This movie, because I'm willing to hand wave away a little bit of like because the first concept is if you can grow a whole new person, can't you also just grow a new heart or something like that? And I'm a little bit willing to hand wave that away. Like if that was the movie's only thing it needed me to accept that was unbelievable, I'd be like, okay. Like sure, I'll accept this for the sake of having a movie, but it then
that is a good point.
It then just goes way further than that is the problem. If everything else in the movie was done perfect and that was the only thing that was a little off, like I would accept that concept.
You could also argue then that like, well, what if this person needs a new liver, but 10 years down the road they might also need a new this, and this, and it's like, well, if you just had a person at the ready, it would be easier. I don't know. That's still not a good argument, but because you could just grow the other organs, but which would be a lot cheaper too, honestly.
Yes, because then you don't have to like feed them and like house them. It's kind of the same thing as the Matrix, where it's like there's actually no reason there's no way that like using the people for energy would actually be more efficient than the amount of energy you need to expend on like the food and whatever to keep them alive. Like it doesn't work as a system. Like it doesn't actually make sense to do for an efficient reason. Like, so like, it's just, that's the thing you have to accept for the movie to happen. So,
but then, one of the key things with the movie is that the clients, the real people in the real world, they're told that their clones are just like dumb vegetables living in like sacks of water, like not intelligent, not conscious.
They never gain consciousness. Yeah, they're just a persistent vegetative state.
And reality is that they're actually people growing very limited. They all have they only last a few years, and then
get harvested.
They have a mentality. They have a mentality of like a I don't know, what they say, a 15-year-old or something, or just younger. And that is kind of weird because when the movie first starts off, the acting wasn't really spot on because it looked like they were all just being regular people. And then there was a point where all of a sudden Ian McGregor was like, obviously like his acting was different. I'm like, is he okay? It's weird. And then
like
I realized he's trying to act like a kid.
Yeah, sometimes they remember to like have them act sort of childlike a little bit, and sometimes they just kind of seem to forget about that. Like one scene that's really
it wasn't smooth
bugs me about is the first time Ewan McGregor kind of gets out, like he sort of finds his way into the other part of the complex where they're doing a surgery, and he like, you know, gets out of the hole in the floor like some sort of, you know, silly.
They have a ladder that leads right up to the middle of the hallway
somehow
like, sure.
for whatever reason, and so he makes his way up there, and he immediately thinks to grab a coat from the coat closet so he blends in. And it's like, if this guy's supposed to be like 3 years old, but his mentality is obviously a little better than that because it's like he is like does have an adult brain because he was, you know, cloned with one. But like this guy's supposed to be kind of innocent, you'd think. Like, you know, there's a conversation earlier where it's like he doesn't even know what God is, like as a concept. Like there's all sorts of things like that. And so it's like I kind of like the scene where they learn the word dude. Like it's a very brief comedic scene. It's a little silly, but it's like, you know, okay, it's a little fun.
Dude. D-O-O-D.
Yeah, D-O-O-D, dude. But the like, why would he think to like put on, you know, a disguise right away? Like that's his first.
He's
impulse.
learning.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's learning.
But it's like
he figured out how to open doors.
Yeah. It's just
he's
funny.
basically a velociraptor.
Yeah, Ewan McGregor, the velociraptor.
Yeah, and so of course he finds out that there. Oh yeah, so another, I can't believe I forgot this. Another huge part of the movie is well, how do you get away with, you know, if people are being harvested, how do you get away with explaining that to the people who think that the whole world's been contaminated? Well, they have this thing called the lottery, where apparently a random selection every time where someone gets selected and they get to leave the containment place and go to the island to repopulate. And so it's always this prize thing that everyone wants. And technically everyone eventually gets it because everyone will need to be harvested at some time. What happens is when they think they're winning the lottery and going to the island, but the reality is the time has come for them to be harvested.
Yeah.
And so there's that whole thing. And so then realizing that there is no island is huge.
And I feel like the way that like the illusion is shattered a little bit so quickly for Ewan. Like I wish there was a little more lead up to that. It's also funny that like he does all these, and maybe it's because he's so innocent. But again, then why would he do the other stuff? It's funny that like the doctor, so Ewan McGregor has to go in for some sort of evaluation, and the doctor puts these creepy things in his eye, and he's like, "We'll be able to see what you see for the next 24 hours." Like, you know, then can do some like psychoanalysis or whatever for some reason. And they never actually use it for that purpose. But then, like, after they put these things in Ewan McGregor's eye, like, Ewan McGregor just continues to do all this stuff that is, like, definitely not allowed by, like, the rules of the
Yeah.
place.
It's probably because he's not smart. In that case, it would be an appropriate reflection of him being, like, you know,
childlike.
5 or 10, childlike.
But it's funny that, again, they can't make up their minds kind of how old they are. But they escape because Ewan McGregor comes back because his like friend Scarlett Johansson has won the lottery, so she's gonna leave like the next day or whatever to go to the island allegedly. And he's like, the island's not real, and we have to go, or else, you know, they're just gonna kill you. Because he witnesses while he's up there. Yeah, he witnesses a birth from a woman like as a surrogate mother, and then they kill her. And then
if you get pregnant, then you can go to the island. But really, that's like someone struggling with infertility, and so they have their clone have a kid.
Yeah, which is funny that here's the thing: there's been actual cases of like people in persistent vegetative states having children that are perfectly healthy, and like some cases it's that like someone gets pregnant and then they, you know, has something terrible happen to them and they go brain dead. And then they're just kept alive, you know, on a life support system until the kid is born. That's happened before. But it's also happened in cases of basically like a hospital and a staff member basically sexually assaults essentially a woman who's in, you know, this PVS, and then she got pregnant and then had this child. So like it's possible for that to happen without the person being, you know, active. So that particular situation is silly, that they would have to have the woman be like, you know, alive, because that's the argument. So the Sean Bean says something like, oh, if the organs don't take unless the donors have actually like experienced life, which fine, I guess. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that, again, like, if you get me to accept the first thing, but then thing after thing after thing,
compound it.
The other thing that's funny, that the holographic, so they're being kept in this massive compound underground, by the way. Yeah, they explain it as like, oh, that old like military bunker. No, this is the biggest underground facility that's ever existed in human history. It's huge. And like the building, it's surrounded by like, it basically is like a whole separate building. So it's not just like an underground facility, it's like a cavern, a gigantic cavern that they then build a structure that has the same dimensions as the one that we, you know, see at the beginning of the movie. And it's like this. Are
there 3, or is it? There's just 2.
There's 3 giant tube things that are basically all like skyscrapers around a central core, and like, oh, they're just massive. They're like, again, they're like skyscrapers, and they all have to.
That's actually how the military. That's actually how the military makes their bases in 2019.
Oh,
don't you know?
Cool,
we just don't know it,
and then abandons them for a private company to take over. And so this company takes, you know, there's holograms, like the windows, like they're just seeing holograms like outside, but it's not like the window itself is like just a screen. There's a giant wraparound hologram that wraps around all 3 of the buildings. So again, that's why it's like, it's a giant cavern. It's not just like they hollowed out the structure underground. It's like, no, they hollowed out a gigantic cavern, and then they built this giant structure underground, and then wrapped it in this holographic projector to like make it look like they're, you know, in some location outside. So it's kind of funny. I also love the transition between the holographic, the fantasy world with the facility, and then the real world where they really are. They're supposed to be in Arizona, like out in the middle of nowhere, and like it's just so clear that there's no connection between these places, because like they like walk outside, and it's like they like come up through like an abandoned hatch of like a ICBM silo is what it looks like, and it's just so like obvious.
There's like worn down fences, and
it's so obvious that clearly there's no way this place is underneath of there. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all, because it's like, is there another place like just over behind the hill there where like all the cars are parked? Because again, all these people, all these black suits, of which there are hundreds, like they're just people who work there every day.
I'd even say dozens. Yeah.
Like, so where do all those people commute to? Because we know they leave the facility because he meets his buddy outside in the bar.
Which is another strange thing, is because then it would require every single employee to keep the secret.
That's the other problem. Is it's too
that the clones are real people living and being deceived.
The secret would have gotten out. Like, this thing's been going on for. We know the one clone says he's 7, so we know it's been going on for at least that long. That they've been having like living human beings that are conscious as these clones to be donors. I think that clone, isn't he the one who's supposed to be the president's clone, like that he could get organs from just kind of whenever he needs them, kind of thing. So I thought that was the same person, but I could be wrong. And like, so again, the secret has to be kept for at least 7 years that this is all happening, and there's hundreds of people who have to be in on the secret. So there's no way that you could keep this like a secret, honestly. Like, there's just simply no way to do it. Like, a conspiracy like this, of this scale, like, you could keep this a secret if there were like maybe 20 people total involved. Like, and maybe that 20 people have to be like high level people, high level people who are evil and also making a lot of money. But like that tech guy, he doesn't seem to be doing so awesome. I mean, he's got like a house and a car, but he's not like, clearly not super rich. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the amount of secrecy that this would require, like, your average like middle class worker, when you have hundreds of them, they're not gonna like be able to keep this hush. Like, someone's gonna let it out on accident what's happening. It's just not possible
at this rate. Mm-hmm.
And also the whole facility kind of seems like it's a secret. Like that's the other thing. I feel like if the hospital's trying to maintain, I feel like really it would be like they have a giant corporation building somewhere, and then like the building underneath of it is where all this sneaky stuff happens. You wouldn't have like this weird place out in the desert, because then it's like, hey, why do like hundreds of people commute to this spot in the middle of nowhere every day? And like also like the guy, we see like a very quick back-to-back scenes of the head doctor who's played by Sean Bean. Like he's giving like a meeting to like some shareholders or something, like a presentation, but then he's back in the facility. So it's like, wait, was that meeting happening at the same place? Like, did they bring all their shareholders out to their sketchy place in the middle of the desert and be like, oh, this is our abandoned nuclear silo, like, welcome?
You're right. Yeah, you're right. And he was trying to show them, like, get them on board with what's going on. And yeah, and then like when at the end there's the main Ewan McGregor, he's faking to be his client, his real person, and so they fly him in to get a rescan because they think they've taken care of the clone. They think they've gotten rid of him, but the clone Ian is still alive. So, or Ewan, what's his name?
Ian,
right?
Lincoln.
Oh, the actor.
Oh, Ewan McGregor.
Ewan.
Yeah, Ewan.
Ewan. Okay, Ewan. I've been saying Ian. Ewan. Shame on me. And they fly. So at least the company thinks they're flying their client in to rescan him, and that apparently is in the same facility as everything else. So apparently, when they scan their clientele to make the clone, they do it at the facility too. But we never see where that building is.
Right. So they have to bring all their clients out to the middle of the desert to like, yeah, it's kind of silly. Oh yeah, there's another one of the other hints. There's a line, and it's actually right before the whole thing is sort of brought out to you, because it's the tech guy goes in the room and he's like, you think all the money this place rakes in, like they could afford some better equipment, and you're like, wait, money in the disease-ridden future where everything is dead? What do you mean money? And then then they like
enough to afford Pumas.
Then they open up like the artificial womb thing, and they like pull out like a newborn adult basically, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what's happening here. So it all gets revealed at that moment. Like the full wool is gone, because at that point I was still thinking maybe, again, like I knew, at that point I figured that like the real world is probably still existing in some form, and the disease is probably at least partially a lie. And when they show like the new guy come in and he looks all silly because he's basically just like a newborn infant, like, and they're like, oh, that's what the disease does. I was like, I bet they inject him with something to make him like forget about life before they bring him here. So I didn't really realize that it was like new people being born at that point yet. But I mean, I knew that like it was all a lie, like what was going on. Yeah. There was enough hints to realize like, yeah, this is all very suspicious very early on.
It was funny in the very beginning of the movie when like the camera like is zooming in, and you kind of see what the facility looks like from the perspective of the hologram. So you know, the first time you see it, it does look like it's this facility in the middle of someplace kind of tropical, and beautiful looking, according to the hologram. But so I remember seeing it. I'm like, haha. I'm like, and then I saw it inside, and it's all white. I'm like, it looks like Camino. It's just another cloning facility. That's before I knew it actually was a cloning facility.
That's actually kind of funny. Yeah,
I know. So
yeah, I also put out, why do you need a baby donor when you can just grow people from scratch?
Yeah.
Can they only grow adults from scratch? They can't grow an infant from scratch.
Yeah.
I love it when the helicopters. So then they hire. So Lincoln 6 Echo or something, and Jordan, whatever her name is. We'll just say Lincoln and Jordan, Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor. They escape, and they're like running out.
Black Widow and Obi-Wan.
Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Black Widow escape.
That's a duo you don't want to mess with.
That's the Marvel Star Wars crossover we need.
Disney can do that now.
Yep. And they escape, and they're running away into the desert. And then we get all these dumb shots so they hire. First of all, they say like the PMC. They hire some PMCs, some private military contractors, to go hunt them down. Um, and they bring the guy in, this dude who's like former GIGN French Special Forces or whatever, and the French guy's like, oh, why are you like having me? Like, you have the entire Department of Defense at your disposal. First of all, like, no, they wouldn't, because the DoD actually doesn't know what's going on here. It's revealed. Right. Sean Bean says, like, oh, if they knew what was really happening, like, this would be a problem. It's like, yeah, so why would the DoD help? Like, saying a line like that you have like a whole DoD at your disposal, why do you need me? It's kind of silly, because it's like, as far as the DoD knows, this is like some like domestic theft. They've reported it as like, oh, somebody's stolen two of our brain dead products. So again, it's just, they will be like the police or the FBI. It would be like the maximum that you'd get, but apparently the whole Department of Defense is willing to listen to this guy, and so he gets these PMCs, which he apparently trusts with a secret. He tells them what's really going on, because they're dirty mercenaries famously like tight-lipped people, I guess. I don't know, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
maybe.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
If I hire one, I'll let you know.
Yeah, right. Whenever the next time I'm talking to my hit team that I have going out solving problems for me, I'll ask how tight-lipped they are.
Oh yeah, we're pretty tight-lipped. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, these guys are hunting them down. We get all these dumb shots of the helicopters. I really hate how they keep doing this like helicopter shot every time.
It's a Michael Bay move.
Yeah, it's like we got to be reminded of the helicopters looking for them. So it's like, dun, 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 like zooming in on these two helicopters. And it's like, why are the helicopters flying in formation? They should be flying a search pattern. They should be flying next to each other. You have two helicopters. They should be.
But
they
it's
should
not
be
scary.
Yeah, they should be like on opposite sides of the area to get the most effective search coverage. But no, we got to have them fly right next to each other the whole time.
and basically, you have Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. They're running through the desert. It's a flat desert, and there's helicopters looking for them. How quickly do you think it's going to take for them to be found running in completely white attire?
Yeah, especially since they're on foot, and they're like, it's only been 4 hours since they've escaped apparently, so they've only could have gone a few miles basically. Like, they're not going to get that far. But they make it to I'm just going to skip over the whole bar scene because it's stupid.
Oh, Ewan, I like the fact he sees like a motorcycle drive by for the first time. He's like, I have no idea what that is, but I want one. I'm like, that's the man instinct kicking in right there.
Yeah, like the boyishness combined with the male instincts, I guess. We sort of realize it's because of the stupid memory crossover thing that doesn't actually play an important role, but they just kind of bring it up for no reason. How like his guy, his client. He designs like motorcycles and yachts and things like that.
Oh, that's why.
And that's why he was dreaming about the yacht, and why.
Which never really comes back. I mean, what we see happen in his dream wasn't foreshadowing anything.
Well, except the end, because they sail away on the boat at the end.
Kind of, but his dream. He was being like murdered on the boat, and I was like, "Ooh, is he maybe like seeing some future memory? Like, is that maybe it's foreshadowing?" No, no.
And then like. The memories never really seem to help him that much. Like, I think it's just to explain like why he can drive a car. That's like the only explanation. But he doesn't remember enough to how stoplights work. He just remembers how to actually like put the car in gear and like drive. But yeah, so he meets up with his old mechanic buddy, and the mechanic like feels bad enough, I guess, to help them out or whatever. And buys them train tickets on the hover train, because there's a hover train 14 years after the movie is made. So that's nice. Right. This is, again, the part of the movie where things have just fully gone off the rails. It's no longer even a little bit interesting.
See, I thought that their portrayal of like a future city was like, if I thought for whatever reason. See, I wouldn't even be surprised if somewhere in the movie they said like 2050 and then a sign said 2019. So I don't know.
That's actually possible. There could have just been some lazy like, no one really knew what they were doing. They were all just kind of throwing it together, and somebody's like, oh, it's 2050, and the other guy's like, no, it's 2019. And Michael Bay's like, oh, I thought this was like a contemporary movie. I thought this was set this year.
No, Because if they have like you see later in the movie, they have cool like flying craft, but they still have helicopters. So
yeah, the helicopters are just totally normal helicopters, and
yeah,
like then there's like there's a mix of like some of the cars are like just like what you'd expect to see on the road in 2005, and some of them are like futury-ish cars,
but they just look like future versions of like an early 2000s vehicle.
Yeah, it looks like what someone in 2005 would make if they wanted to make a car that looked futuristic. It's not like Minority Report where they're like incorporating new technology that they can do crazy stuff. It's just like a car that looks cool-ish, I guess.
Yeah, but like I liked the portrayal of like the future city though. Like I thought it was a bit more realistic than what we saw in Minority Report.
If it was set in 2050, then yeah, it would be pretty cool. 2019, it's a little crazy that they would have all these like, flying trains, but yeah.
So basically you had all these trains that were basically running on two like looks like what do you call them, like string rails,
very thin rails that are just kind of suspended in air, it seems like
suspension, like I can't think of the word, like ropes or whatever, and they're just kind of crisscrossing throughout the city. I'm like, okay, so they're not like legit hovering, but they are like, it does kind of look futuristic. And then the main thing that I appreciated was like you saw all the old buildings, right? Like a skyscraper city. So which is a good point because you'd still have all those old buildings, but then you had the newer buildings that were intermingled with the old buildings. Yeah. And the new buildings definitely looked a bit like newer and, well, iconically different. And I appreciated that. I'm like, I could believe that because like the city still felt dirty and crowded.
I mean, think about it. Like there's a lot of big buildings. They stick around for a really long time. The Empire State Building. It's not like that went away. It's still there in New York.
Like a lot of times it's like here's the future city, and like every single skyscraper looks new and sleek. I'm like, actually no.
There's a side note here in The Expanse, which is a really great TV show. We should maybe cover that sometime if we need something. Ooh, okay. If we need a break from just terribleness, if we get too many bad ones in a row again. The Expanse is set like 300 years in the future, I believe. And there's some shots in New York, and yeah, they do the same thing where it's like all these cool future buildings, but I love that you still see like the One World Trade Center, the new one they built after 9/11. They rebuilt it. Like that building's there, like, and you still see it. So it's kind of cool to see like, the mix of like the old and the new next to each other. So it's kind of neat to see stuff like that. I like it when, it helps. I don't even know. What was that?
I don't even know if a skyscraper can last 300 years. We haven't found that out yet.
I guess that's true. But I guess if it was maintained properly, there's no reason why they couldn't. You could be like, is it the same building? They've probably replaced every part on it, but if it was maintained properly.
Yeah, right. Sure. We'll talk about philosophy some other time. If you replace every part of the boat, is it the same boat?
I mean, you've got like those ancient like cathedrals and basilicas and things that have lasted hundreds and hundreds of years. So like, if people are willing to take care of something, it'll last a long time, even if it's like older construction. So you can still go into the Parthenon in Rome. It's the largest freestanding concrete dome in the world. It was built 2,000 years ago. So
that's a good point.
Yep. Or is it the Parthenon? I might have just misspoke. I'm not the greatest at naming all the ancient buildings. I mean, I know the Colosseum, obviously, but it's the one with the dome. It's literally a concrete dome, and it's safe enough for you to like go in there and like stand underneath of it and everything. And
isn't the Parthenon like?
It might be in Greece.
Not a dome.
That might be the one.
I thought
Greece.
The Parthenon was like a building.
Yeah, I can't remember the one that's the dome, but basically there's a giant dome that you can stand underneath of in Rome that. It's still there, and it's 2,000 years old. So cool.
Very cool.
The future semi truck looks a lot like a Tesla semi. That kind of made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Just coincidental there,
dude. Yeah. So there's a chase scene. And by the way, just this whole movie is just from the cinematography is so. This really isn't a complaint. I just don't have a taste for Michael Bay style, but you can totally tell it's Michael Bay because the camera lens saturation is super rich, and then there's lens flares everywhere. Yes. Like the sun is always in your face and like shining, and it's like okay. So anyways, that's happening, and there's this chase scene on the highway, and they're basically Lincoln and Jordan, the protagonists, the clones, they're hiding on a semi truck as it's driving the truck you just mentioned, and they start. So apparently they have regular trains still.
There's also
Because
regular trains, because of
the transporting like train wheels.
I noticed
and the
that,
axles.
and my only theory is maybe they're like those are the old ones from trains
Retiring
that are being
them.
like it's scrapped or something. That's
So it's explained away.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, whatever, because they looked old and scrappy. They didn't look new. They looked old and rusty, and so that's leaving the city. And then they start dehitching them from the semi truck. So that way, all these giant train wheels are like falling down the cars behind them.
A lot of people should be dead in this movie. There's a lot of people who should be dead that aren't.
And I just remember seeing, like, can you imagine being that truck driver and looking in your rearview mirror and seeing your load of like train wheels smashing every car behind you? Through the whole scene. He's just blasting his music up there, not aware of.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the gut drop you would have? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't strap in.
Yeah, looking in your rearview mirror and just seeing like dozens of cars.
I've just killed 12 people.
Yeah,
you know?
I'm going to jail forever.
Yeah, like, oh man, that was intense.
There's a lot of moments of like stuff like that in the whole scene where they're being the very, very long middle of this movie that is basically just them getting chased by the PMCs through various locations and action sequences. It contains many unbelievable moments in terms of like so first of all, they're like just the fact that their buddy gets shot right away, right as they're getting on the first train. Basically, he just gets shot. He's yells at them to run because he realizes that this guy in front of him is probably like working for the company because he's got like an earpiece in and he knows that they're going to be looking for these guys.
Yeah.
And he's like, run! And the guy pulls out a gun and shoots him in the middle of a train station full of other people. That makes no sense whatsoever. They're not law enforcement or anything, and I get it. So if they were actual criminals, you could maybe argue it, but they're not criminals either. Like, you could be like, maybe the, Merrick or whatever hired some like crime syndicate to take all these people out. But no, they're just PMCs. And also, like, think of the evidence this guy has to go off of. He doesn't even know. Maybe the dude's just yelling run. Like, he doesn't know he's with the like clones at this point. They don't know that they're together necessarily. So like, this dude just looks over the balcony and yells run to the two clones that are like way down in the distance. And then he just pulls out a handgun and shoots him in the middle of a crowded train station with tons of witnesses. This man has done nothing to provoke him. He's not armed. He is not attacking him. There's no violent intention. So again, like, there's no way you could say like they don't care about following the law. That's fine, but like again, now there's going to be like a murder investigation happening here. It's like somebody got murdered in the train station. We need to figure out, you know what I mean? Like, maybe the PMCs are good enough that they can avoid getting caught like later on, but like this is, weird that you do this. It doesn't make any sense. It's just like, I guess they just wanted to write that character out of the movie, and that was like the laziest way they could do it. Was like, we'll just have him.
He didn't need to be written out.
He could have just,
because he was like the one person that had a heart.
Yeah. And
like the one employee that was willing to befriend one of the clones.
Or just like have him dump him on the train and be like, good luck. Like, and just have him leave that way. But then you can't have a dumb action scene.
Well, he probably would have died because Ewan still had the little probes getting all his eye.
Well, like, but again, there's no reason for them to kill him. Like, it actually hurts them to kill him because now there's that much extra scrutiny. Because again, he's not a clone; he's a real person. So if he just suddenly gets killed, there's gonna be like, the government knows this guy exists. He has family and friends in the real world. There would be a murder investigation, whether they would find them or not. Like, there would still be a big investigation and that much more of a chance of getting caught.
Yeah.
They could have just tried to quietly, pay him off, do whatever you need to do, like, and get the clones back. But like, to literally just straight up shoot him in the middle of a crowded train station, it's one of the dumbest moments. I mean, this movie is full of dumb moments, but that was one that stuck out to me like as just incredibly dumb. And then the other incredibly dumb thing is, first of all, so he gives them their credit card, and so then it's reported as being stolen or whatever, right? And so then they use it, and I love that the LAPD apparently has like the fastest response time to credit card theft in the world, because they like, I can't even remember what they used the credit card for, but like 3 LAPD cars roll up. And like, I guess
it was like a payphone.
Yeah, and hell yeah, payphone in 2019 or 20. Anyway, 2019. The most unrealistic part of the movie. But all the police roll up and they're like pointing guns at them. And in fairness, at that point, I guess they're theoretically investigating the murder because they're using the credit card of a dead man who's been murdered. So you could say that's part of it too. But even still, that's an incredibly quick response type of like LAPD rolling up and arresting them. And the clones don't necessarily know this, but like it's probably better for them to get arrested by LAPD.
Yeah, because then they're gonna be like, "Oh shoot, you guys are clones! I didn't know you guys looked like this."
We didn't know this was
to testify in a court.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
which I thought at that moment the movie was going in that direction. Like they were just trying to get arrested so that way they could be tried in a court of law.
That would maybe be smarter. Like if Michael Bay didn't direct this movie, maybe they could have gone in that direction. But
this movie is just full of things that like. There's not a lot of good motivation behind characters. There's not a lot of development at all.
Yeah, because
things just happened. Like it's like their typical like story. Like they're not bad like plot moves. Like but then this guy has a change of heart, and then it's like this guy sees this, so he does this action that's a little extreme. But this is why. Like all these things happen that might be expected in a movie plot wise, but like. They just kind of happen super abruptly with Michael Bay, and they're not really. There's no development. There's no build.
Them that much, or they're
not foreshadowed.
They'll like give it one scene 2 minutes before it happens that introduces the concept because that's as far in advance as Michael Bay can think, and then then it'll happen. It's just it's not great. And then the PMCs attack the LAPD, which is again one of the most unbelievable parts of this movie. Is like, do you know how much of a just crap storm that would cause if like armored men in like trucks and helicopters start attacking
downtown LA
in LA in the middle of the city, like attack LAPD officers and like kill several of them. Also, that's the first moment in the movie in which the clones should have definitely died because their opening move in the attack is to ram the car carrying the clones, and the car basically just explodes. Everyone in that car should be dead. But they're fine. They're totally fine. Then
there's several super aggressive moves. The what are the PMCs?
Private military contractors.
There's several very aggressive moves they did. I'm like, okay, I guess they're trying to bring them in dead or alive, which I guess they kind of were. Yeah, because. You see later that they're willing to kill them.
Yeah.
The clones. So I guess they were just trying to kill them.
You could have made it where it was more dystopian and like had the LAPD be like, controlled by corporate interests or whatever. But that's not the case because the world outside isn't actually all that dystopian. It's just this like secret thing being run by this corporation because again, the PMCs literally have to attack the LAPD convoy carrying the prisoners in order to get them back. Like they're not willing to hand them over or something. Like this is like again the only way Michael Bay knows how to solve a problem is with like a violent action scene. There can't be like a scene where they're like bribing the police like, yeah, what if we took these back or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it has to just be violence and shooting and ramming cars into things and explosions and helicopter crashes, and they literally fall off a building at one point and survive.
Yeah, see, there's like pretty early on in this movie, I just realized like I'm just not going to take notes as I watch this. Like I didn't really write anything down from this because I just know this is going to be thing after thing after thing. That's going to be like okay, because there's not going to be a lot of like super intelligent things I'm going to be able to like genuinely artistic cool things in this movie, and there's gonna be lots of things that aren't explained. So I was just like, okay, well, it's an action movie, so I'm just gonna sit back and sigh.
Yeah,
because they fell off a building and they got caught in a net. Poor Annette. No, I'm just kidding. They got caught in like this weird net thing, and they lived, and they got in a car that was torn in half, and it was like, oh, okay, and stuff like that happens.
Yeah,
it's like, well, what are you gonna do, Michael Bay? Okay, moving on.
There's lots of just nitpicks like that. There's when they bring the female Jordan replicant in. Or I'm mixing words now, but they bring the clone. They bring Scarlett Johansson in to like they're gonna use her because her donor like needs some organs right away or whatever. That's why she won the lottery. That prompted the escape to happen. But like. they bring her in, to bring her into the operation after they've recaptured her, and she's been hiding a gun on her this entire time. It is then revealed. And
I would believe that because no one would expect a clone to be smart enough to have a weapon.
I just feel like that's the most
and
basic thing, though, like just to check them, like that they.
I don't know. I really think because they weren't expecting that at all, and they're supposed to be a dumb clone, and they're just trying to get like
maybe if they're
harvest her as quickly as
maybe
possible.
They're underestimating them that much, but to me it just feels. Well, here's the thing, though. Immediately before that, Lincoln, the real Lincoln, is pointing a gun at the clone Lincoln, but the clone Lincoln is able to convince the mercenary that's the clone, the one with the gun.
See, again, that's another cool concept, is like, okay, they're trying to capture, and then all of a sudden the PMCs, they don't like, how do you tell who's the clone and who's not the clone? Like, that's actually an interesting issue.
Yeah, and Ewan McGregor slips his little bracelet from the facility onto the real guy, so that way he thinks, oh, it's that one. But that would again just prove that the clones could use a gun. So I feel like then when they capture Scarlett Johansson later, that searching someone for weapons when you're taking them prisoner is like, I don't care who they are, like that's like probably like the most basic thing you could possibly do. And Scarlett Johansson manages to have a gun on her the whole way in. And here's the thing, at first, because like around that scene we see the conversation with Du Bois or whatever the French guy is. He has a conversation that makes it seem like maybe he's questioning his loyalty a little bit. And then when we have that scene happen, I think basically around the same time, it's like, oh, maybe we've just found out somehow he's working with them, which would be silly, that he'd have a change of heart after murdering all these LAPD officers and like stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But like
that was another change of heart scene where it's like, okay, I can see what he's doing. Like we kind of want to like him. He does the right thing.
But he did
like
all the wrong
motivation
things up to.
Yeah, it was like that doesn't add up. That character should not have done that, but it's cool that he did.
I guess so.
The writing was not good for that, but that was actually what some of my. That's like the only thing I wrote down from this movie. He had some lines in there that I thought were actually really appropriate and like well placed, and like being in the audience, like I felt it. It's like, ooh, you got him. I enjoyed some of those lines he shared. Mm-hmm. That was about it. Yeah. That's like the only really cool part of the movie for me.
For me, I think it's just a couple parts right at the beginning are fine. But again, then as soon as the illusion is being shattered, is like, this is bad. Like,
yeah, I liked it. I really did like at the end of the movie how eventually the illusion is shattered and all the captives, so to speak, get set free. That was cool. I like that.
I mean, it's nice that the good guys win.
The villain, villain got a. I mean, the villain. Sean Bean was honestly, like, most of the villains in this movie were just unbelievably like just vile. Like, okay, who is like that? Like, no one. Like, maybe Hitler. You know what I mean?
I mean, I could believe one guy as being like so evil, but like, oh yeah, him pointlessly killing people is the part I couldn't believe. Where like he starts like injecting random, people to kill them, like so that takes the idea that this dude could be running this institute to like harvest organs, but it's being done in a very clinical way. Like, they're killing people, but it's all kind of like under control. Like that, I could believe that. Like, he could be that evil, sure. But then to have him like personally be like injecting clones to kill them, like as he's questioning them and realizing that like they're, his control is slipping, like that borders into like cartoon evil, like fate. Darth
but he
Vader.
does get a good death. Spoiler. At the end, and I don't know. There's something that's nice about a terrible villain that gets a gruesome death. Is always just like, but like it's done, not just in like a he gets shot multiple times, but it's like, wow, that was a pretty gruesome death, and well, he was pretty evil. So like, no. You never want anyone to die. No one should die. But it's like, that was kind of satisfying. Like, he deserved that probably. I do find it interesting. So Sean Bean gets this thing shot through his neck at the end, which is like again, another super vicious thing about this movie is that the way the guards have these guns that shoot these huge hooks into the clone if they try running away, like from the surgery or whatever that harvests them. They don't just like tase them or whatever. They just like shoot these vicious hooks that pull, that like clearly goes way into them, that could
sever an artery or something.
Yeah, sever the artery.
Yeah.
But they shoot him, and then they pull him. They reel them back to their surgery room.
It's just dramatic for the dramatic scene of watching the guy like get dragged down the hallway, back to the operating room.
He's got a great face for it too, because he's the guy from The Green Mile, the big giant. For anyone who's seen that movie, have you seen that movie?
No, I have not.
The Green Mile. It's a good one with Tom Hanks. But anyways. He's got a good face that like he's like this big guy, but you totally sympathize with him. He's got a good crying face, and so they used him for that scene. It was like, okay, so like Sean Bean gets shot with one of these through the neck. Okay, so like, dead.
Yes.
Well, then Ewan proceeds to try to choke him as well. It's like after his neck has been shot through, he tries choking him. It's like, okay. Maybe he's got the kid mentality, so he didn't have to do that.
Doesn't understand that shooting people through the neck.
He ends up
kills
hanging.
them.
Yeah. So Sean Bean's hanging from this bridge, being shot through the neck, and he's still somehow struggling to live and breathe. It's like, okay, well, that was the gruesome death that I appreciated, but still, it's like, after I shoot you through the neck, I'm gonna try to choke you, and then I'm gonna throw you off a bridge and hang you. It's like, okay, I get the point.
And then we're going to go back to where your body's buried, and we're going to dig it up, and we're going to run it over with a tank and set it on fire.
And then we're going to choke you again.
Yeah, then we're going to clone you, and then we're going to kill your clone.
That would have been a nice surprise, actually, Sean Bean having a clone.
Oh, then the clone kills him or something. Yeah, that might have been a little too... Yeah, I know what you're saying, though, yeah. That is funny that Sean Bean wouldn't have a clone, because I feel like he totally would, because he's like,
Yeah.
But, like, I guess... The fact that Sean Bean works with the clones, and then there'd be like a clone of him.
Yeah. I would think he'd have like a private clone that's actually cloned to be like smart and it's private in his own private area. But whatever. So
that would actually be really funny, is if the movie was like a multi-layer of illusion where it's like there's the clones in the facility, and then all the people that work in the facility were also clones, but they didn't know. And then there was like another group above them or something. Just keeps going. Keeps peeling back the layers.
Sequel after sequel after sequel. Turns out all the people that thought they were clones were actually the real people. And all the real people are actually the clones.
Oh no. And the clones it's revealed like, oh, you guys tried to use us for organ donors or whatever. And so we took over, and then we made all of you become Yeah.
And then you can have the Clone Wars.
So, final recommendation: no, don't watch this movie. Not even
cool concepts.
Yes,
bad movie.
Exactly. Like if this movie was in any way better, maybe. But like the problem is it's not even dumb in an enjoyable way. Like that's I guess my biggest problem with it is like
my biggest was the dialogue was not. Like, you could tell Scarlett Johansson was acting well, but it just was not working for this movie.
You could tell Scarlett Johansson almost seemed like they were telling her to be worse.
I don't know.
I almost feel like... I mean, she did some decent jobs, but I almost feel like they were telling her... I feel like Michael Bay, like, has this... Michael Bay does not have good female characters. There's the really weird sexual scene, too, between Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. And I'm like, this feels like Michael Bay does some weird stuff with relationships in his movie. You kind of worry a little bit about him. He's like, there's this one in Transformers where they like the dude's dating the underage girl, and they make a point of having him explain that it's okay for him to date an underage girl. And you're like, hey, how hard would it have been to just make her like 18 in the script?
Yeah.
You could have just done that too. That that would have been easier. Yeah. But instead we have to have a whole scene in which the character explains that it's all right for him to date a 17-year-old. It's pretty weird, man. It's pretty weird.
Yeah.
So, and then they make a specific point in this movie of like they don't know what sex is, and then they discover it, and it's like, okay, this is strange that like you had to have this scene in here too. It feels very whatever.
Forced.
Yeah.
So strangeness in this movie, yes. Poor screenplay and dialogue, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's
maybe 8 out of 10. I don't know.
Just give
and then
the big old thumbs down. That's what I'll give it. So All right, the island.
The island, the Island.
The Island.